This was a Saturday morning Hustle Flashback episode.
Hey everyone, we have a special edition of the Saturday Morning Hustle podcast, a first ever interview with a special guest, my guy, Hoang Lam, the host of the Defining Moments podcast, the CEO of CMM Financial, and the undefeated bro on social media. That's right, he's my dude. We're going to talk today about challenging yourself. One of the things you do and you talk about a lot on your podcast and your social media is about challenge yourself, getting yourself outside your comfort zone. We like talking about that on the Saturday Morning Hustle too, so we're going to talk about that today. You ready?
Let's do it.
It's Saturday. I'm in the office. You know what that means, the Saturday Morning Hustle podcast. No hyperbolic hustle culture, just brutally honest, straightforward business advice and motivation every Saturday for entrepreneurs, business owners, or anyone pursuing success. You can't just work 9 to 5 Monday through Friday and hope to become the next big thing. You gotta work smart, work hard, put in extra effort while everyone else is sleeping, playing games, or wasting time. Maximize bonus time to get more work done. This podcast is for anyone willing to come in early, stay late, hustle on the weekend to be truly great. Hoang Lam, tell the people who you are.
My name is Hoang Lam. I am the host of the Defining Moments podcast. I am the CEO of CMM Financial Services, and I am the founder and owner of StormCheck.
He's a very multifaceted dude, a dude who hustles most Saturdays out there cleaning storm shelters out with veterans. Yeah. Let's start there. Let's just, it's Saturday, you're probably cleaning a storm shelter on Saturday today.
Yeah.
Let's talk about why StormCheck happens and who you do that with and who you do that for.
I appreciate that, Kyle. Number one, thank you for having me on this show because I'm a big fan of it. You probably notice that every morning or Saturday morning I'll tweet it out, quote tweet it, get it out there because it's awesome. It's free information, right?
Right.
So StormCheck, I started that in 2020, LLC'd it. I actually started cleaning storm shelters in 2021. We actually have 3 today to clean. And it's because my parents were rescued by United States military from Vietnam off a fishing boat. And the question
what year was that?
That was my parents are in 75.
All right, right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. They were the last ones out to fall of Saigon. What really prompted that is the question is, what more can you do to serve your community? And of course, I didn't get the privilege and distinct honor to serve in the United States military for other reasons. However, that's the question: is what more can you do in your community? And I started StormCheck, like I said, in 2020. Started cleaning in 2021. My first hire is a guy named Claude Mills. He's a veteran. We met off of Twitter. His story is quite inspiring, and it actually quite inspired me to start StormCheck. So, yeah.
So employing veterans is just one of the ways that you give back for your appreciation for the U.S. military.
Absolutely, 100%.
Speaking of military, the United States, you're one of the more patriotic people I know. Loud and proud patriot, and I appreciate it so much.
Absolutely.
So let's get a little further into that. Your parents fled communism and were rescued by the United States military, brought to the United States, and eventually you came along. So give us a little bit of that story and what it means to you as an adult now living here in the United States, the greatest place on earth.
I absolutely agree with everything you just said about the United States. My parents, if we turn the clock back to 75, they were forced onto a fishing boat by my grandfather, who was in the South Vietnamese equivalent Navy. They were stuck at sea for about 33 days, rescued by the United States military, and they found their way to a refugee camp in Fort Chaffee, Arkansas. Got sponsored by 3 couples in Guthrie, Oklahoma. And when I say sponsored, it wasn't where these couples gave my parents money. These sponsors helped my parents learn English and learn how to get a job, find a job. So my parents started mowing yards in Nichols Hills, and we're cleaning offices, things like that. And we're making money where they could eventually sponsor some of their family over, which is my grandparents, my aunts and uncles. My dad, one of his first jobs I remember was at Denny's. And a cool story about that is his manager would actually overcook a lot of meals in the evening to give to my dad, to take them to my mom. So, because my mom was pregnant with me, and to feed my mom, like steaks, lobster, shrimp, things like that. And it's stories like that don't really get told and heard because people just don't tell those stories. And what makes the United States so great is because of the people within this great country.
Absolutely.
Like the sponsors.
Right.
That gave my parents a chance. The United States military gave my parents the ultimate chance and the ultimate shot at freedom. And so with me being able to live here in the greatest country, what more can I do to take advantage of this freedom? Because the word privilege gets thrown around too loosely. When we think about it, or when I think about it, I have the absolute privilege to be living in the greatest country as an American. So that's a privilege we all share.
And a different perspective on freedom, because your
Yeah.
parents, not only did they come through this journey, but they've since you have been a young child, you've heard how they escaped communism and the reasons that they thought, not because someone told them, but they thought communism was bad, and that the freedom they found in America was much better.
Absolutely. Yeah, and the freedom in America, it's you have the freedom to do anything you want. They come with unintended consequences too.
Sometimes.
Right. Yeah, sometimes. Being respectful. It's not hard to be respectful. It's not hard to love your country. It's not hard to be an awesome human being and to do great things because you're given that chance.
And I think I know what you were going with there, but because we've been in a couple of conversations with people sometimes where everyone in the conversation has a different perspective on maybe a political issue or a social issue.
Sure.
And you and I are in the agreement of like, hey, have your opinion. You can talk about it, be respectful. And then, in the conversation, we're still friends, right?
Right. Correct.
Not everyone kind of sees it that way.
That's true. And a few months ago, actually, we were in a conversation where actually I was just listening to the conversation and it got super heated. At first, I thought it was just like, okay, cordial. But it got to the point where it's like, man, I started feeling uncomfortable. It wasn't just the heat from the sun, but it's just heat from the conversation. It's like, man, why is this person railing on Kyle? It didn't make any sense to me.
It happens.
It's too emotional.
That's right.
Let's go back to logical.
Let's go back to talking about getting outside your comfort zone. Something that is another common theme with you. Now, when you started the Defining Moments podcast, I've heard you say this many times to many guests on the podcast, and Hoang records his podcast here in the studio.
Love it.
Right? So it may look familiar. If you're a fan of Hoang's podcast and you're checking this out, it looks familiar because we work in the same studio together. But you've told people over and over again, when they say, why did you want to start a podcast? What's your answer to that?
It's to challenge yourself with doing something you've never done before to get uncomfortable.
Perfect, right?
Yeah.
So tell me, you're like, what made you even decide I need to challenge myself? And then the second half of that is then when you said I'll challenge myself via a podcast.
Yeah. So the reason why Margy is my wife, and as a married couple, we've never done anything together. We haven't really collaborated on anything. She is a health coach. I coach boys competitive soccer, and both those seasons were ending for us, and we're starting a new journey together. And so what was that challenge going to be? What does it look like? In the whole political scheme of things, and not just politics left or right, but just the corporate politics, life politics, is how can we build a bridge to bring our neighbors, our family, and of course, leaders of the community to sit across the table and have a conversation? And that was a challenge. That was very uncomfortable because we're not audio engineers like Kyle, he's right. This studio is awesome, built by Kyle. I love it. Actually, we just come in and plug and play.
Right.
But it's a challenge to get uncomfortable. I've never been a host of anything, not a DJ, and now this is Margy. We're not public speakers. But one of our first guests was our neighbor across the street. Lost his leg in his first tour in Iran. Iraq. So then from there, we went all the way to meet the governor of the great state of Oklahoma, Governor Stitt.
Governor, lieutenant governor, senators, all kinds of police chiefs, multiple police chiefs.
Yeah.
All kinds of amazing people have been on this podcast.
Yeah. Kyle Golding included, honestly.
Right.
Yeah.
That's right. He had me on there one time too, tried to make me cry. like he does. So what have you learned from yourself about doing that, about pushing yourself outside that comfort zone and taking that challenge on? And now that you've been doing it for quite a while, how does that benefited your life?
It's scary to get out of that comfort zone.
And you still get nervous every time you do one.
I do. I'm nervous right now.
You should
sitting
not be
here.
nervous right now.
I do get nervous hosting a show. I get nervous on the other side of the table. I do wedding officiating too. Just married Senior Chief George.
Right. In Hawaii?
No, it was here.
Was
Oklahoma.
it here?
Yeah.
Okay, he's from Hawaii.
He's from Hawaii. That's correct. Yeah. So it's scary to get out of that comfort zone. And at first I was like, man, people are going to judge, and you kind of get to the point where you're like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter who says what about your show, because I have the distinct honor and privilege to sit across the table to hear your story. And whether you're the governor or you're the neighbor across the street, whether you're Travis across the street, I get that hour and that moment with you, and no one else can have that moment.
So you're putting yourself out there doing a podcast
Yeah.
that you've never done before. You put yourself out there on social media a lot. You're very active on social media. We have a lot of fun on social media.
Yeah.
But we all also know social media has some darkness to it.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of negativity on social media. Now, one of the questions you ask people on your podcast is, how do you deal with negativity? So I'm asking you that question. How do you deal with negativity?
Yeah, I appreciate that, Kyle, or that question, Kyle, a lot. And I've thought about that, and I don't block anyone on social media. I let it roll. I see there is a lot of negativity, and I'm trying to get their perspective of it. And if I can't really figure that out, I'll scroll on. I'll just scroll and let it go. I've actually met a lady off of social media a few weeks ago, and she questioned me on, it's like, well, why did you block so and so? And I asked her, I was like, who did I block? She's like, this person. So I pulled up myself. I was like, I didn't block nobody. Here's who you're talking about, right? And so if there's a question, get to the source. Get to the source before you start accusing people of doing X, Y, and Z.
Right.
Right. So to deal with negativity, I just keep rolling. Just keep rolling.
You also have a habit on your podcast. You say you described it as your love language is giving gifts. You give people amazing gifts. I have I have the Defining Moments podcast t-shirt on here today as well. How did that come about too? And when you and Margy were trying to decide to do that, how, making that commitment to giving a gift to every single person that comes on the podcast, what was that conversation like?
It started out with the book, The 5 Love Languages.
Okay.
Because she's read that, and her love language is quality time spent with her. And my love language is gift giving. And together we're like, hey, well, the quality time that we get to sit with the guest is awesome. And then we're able to give a gift to the guest as well. So the combination of both, the collab of both of those is what we do. And we enjoy it 100%.
Now that you're a champion podcaster, an amazing professional podcaster, whether you get nervous or not, you're really good at what you do. And I give you a hard time sometimes because we're pals, right?
Thank
you. I do want to make sure, one more time, I'm going to tell y'all folks, the Defining Moments podcast, make sure you find it on all the podcast platforms, and the links to all of Hoang's socials are going to be on the show notes as well, because I want you guys to follow him on social, and I want you to listen to his podcast, because I'm serious about how good it is. But now that you're a very accomplished podcaster, you've had the governor on, you've had all kinds of important people on. What do you think maybe you'll do in the future that it's gonna push you out of that comfort zone, whether it's a podcast or something completely different?
That's another great question, is what's next?
Right.
What's the next level of, whether it's Defining Moments podcast or the next guest you get on? And Margy and I talked about this. Why not do Defining Moments Media, where you have several different podcasts under your umbrella, and it's powered by Defining Moments Media?
That makes sense.
And so why not have episodes where you're sitting in a coffee shop and you're having real raw conversations with whomever that might be. And then you blast it out there and say, hey, if you don't like our views, or hey, if you want to join in on the view, come in on Monday mornings at where we're going to host a show, and let's see what happens.
I know you also did kind of a series within your podcast specific on leadership. So it's kind of the same idea, that maybe Dick's expanding on that idea a little bit.
Yeah. Leadership through adversity. It's leadership is one of my favorite words, and adversity is an adjective that describes the word. And so what led you to being a leader? Because I don't feel like leaders are born, right? You hear people, he was a born leader. However, you don't know. Maybe it's a figure of speech, and I'm not good with figure of speeches. That's kind of like saying, well, it's 6 one way, half a dozen the other. And growing up, I'm like, what does that mean? Just say, hey, it's the same way going out of the way. Just be simple about it. But it's just, true leaders are the calm ones in the room during a riot. The true leaders are the calm ones during a storm that say, hey, we're going to be fine.
Right.
Right. But that's a reputation that's built over time. Exactly like trust, exactly like respect. Over time, you're going to find those natural born, quote unquote, natural born leaders.
And it's really actions, not words.
Correct.
Right?
Correct.
That's what it comes down
Absolutely,
to.
100%.
Okay. Now, speaking of leadership, and also on our theme of pushing yourself out of your comfort zone or trying something new, you recently just changed not only jobs, but changed career fields.
Yeah.
So tell people the change and how you made the decision to push yourself out of your comfort zone and do something new.
Yeah, and that's another great question. Another segment is I worked at Chesapeake Energy for 16, almost 17 years, and I got laid off end of October of 2022. Two of my good friends, business partners, this Josh Walker and Scotty Bryan, they do a lot of syndicated investments. I mean, they're brilliant men. They bought an accounting firm. And of course, I do investments with them. I was like, I will invest in this accounting firm, CMM Financial. And a few weeks later, they knew that I got let go. They asked, hey, what are your thoughts about being a CEO? Because we want you to be the CEO.
There you go.
Never been a CEO of anything in my life besides my own life. But as far as CEO roles, I've coached boys competitive soccer, but I've just never in management at Chesapeake at all. And for them to ask, I was blown away, and actually I was flattered that they asked me that. So I talked to my wife about it,
mm-hmm.
and she said absolutely. I second guessed myself. She said absolutely.
Right.
Josh said absolutely. Scotty said absolutely. And I was like, okay, well, let's do this. The first couple weeks were crazy because you go into a different arena, is what I call it, and try to understand what systems are there. And more importantly, who are the staff?
Right.
Trying to get to know the staff.
Got to know the people.
Right. And seeing what kind of culture that they were living in and what kind of culture can we create together for the new CMM Financial Services. And that challenge was actually a lot easier than I thought because our staff is amazing.
Mm.
Now, I did have to make some staff decisions a few months ago because everything to me is merit-based. You earn your way through society. You earn your way through a company.
Mm-hmm.
You do well, you get rewarded.
Right.
And you make mistakes, it's okay.
Yeah.
But you got to learn from the mistakes. But if you keep making the same mistakes over, then something's got to give. Right? So had to make those changes, kept the culture going strong with our current staff, added more staff
mm-hmm.
too, and they've acclimated to the culture, which the culture at CMM is just have fun, be awesome, do great things for the clients in the community. And you can do those three, that combination, it's easy.
So you said there were some things that were easier than you expected them to be. What was one or two things that were much harder than you thought it would be?
What was hard is understanding the language of accounting versus the language of engineering.
There's a lot of acronyms, aren't there?
Yeah, there's a lot of acronyms. So that was probably one of the hardest things, is understanding the two different languages as far as the way accountants speak versus the engineering world, oil and gas speaks.
Engineers are pretty notorious too for being very specific in the way they speak.
Yeah. So that was probably the hardest thing, is understanding the language.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we've talked about work. We've talked about the podcast. We've talked about challenging yourself. We've talked a little bit about your family history, your vision of what freedom means to you,
mm-hmm.
and living in this great country. Let's talk about fun.
Yeah, let's do it.
What do you and Margy do for fun?
Wow. That's a great question. We feel like life is actually pretty fun, and so she makes it a habit she'll get home around 5, and I'll get home around 5:30, and she'll make dinner, and we'll sit at the bar area, and we'll sit there and chat about life. My wife's into crypto, so I think that's a lot of fun, and she does an amazing job. She's on a crypto development team, and so to me that's fun, is hearing about her day, her stories, and honestly some decisions and struggles that she has to go through in corporate America still, right, with things that she has to deal with. nothing major or big, but just hearing some of the struggles she deals with. And then we, on the weekends, will go and we'll work out together, go on walks, try to meet our neighbors across the street in our neighborhood.
Right.
We do that for fun. We do a lot of volunteering. We volunteer at the food bank. We had a youth group, and we challenged them to go and volunteer with us. We challenged them to, your point, Kyle, is write your goals down for the week and see where you are at the end of the week.
That's right. We've talked about that on this podcast many times.
And got that from you.
Making your goals, your to-do list. That's right.
Yeah.
Just organizing,
Yeah.
putting it all together.
Yeah. So we're doing that, and my wife and I we're trying to start a family, so we're going through some procedures to do that, and so it's great things that are
Well, that's a big
looking
step.
forward to. Yeah, that's huge.
That's a major step in someone's life.
Yeah.
You can tell me if I'm prying too much to get too personal here, but how did you guys even just broach this subject matter and start discussing something like starting a family? I haven't had, we don't have kids, and so just curious how, because that seems like push yourself out of your comfort zone. It could have been an uncomfortable conversation, even with a great partner like Margy. So how did you guys kind of come to, was it one or you or the other, or did you both come to it at the same way? Or?
Well, so my wife, Margy, she's been wanting to start a family for about 3 years. And so we started trying about 3 years ago. But what led up to that is, like, I joke around a lot, but I feel like there's always a truth to every joke. There's a little bit of truth.
Sure.
And I was like, man, we need to raise the next great leader.
There you go.
That loves America, that loves freedom, that just loves to just be amazing. And so I told her that. She's like, you're exactly right. Let's do it.
I'm going to give you a couple words. You tell me what they mean to you. We've already talked about freedom. How about the word hustle?
What does the word hustle mean to me?
Yep.
Such a good question. Man, almost stumped me on. I think you kind of did stump me on this one. The word hustle to me is just go out there and do it. There's no wrong time to start, and there's no wrong time to stop, but it only starts when you start. So hustle to me is it starts when you start it, and it'll actually stop when you stop it.
It's up to you.
It's up to you.
How about the word leadership?
Leadership. Good word. One of my favorite words is leadership starts at home. Always.
I completely 100% agree with that.
And it's something that's earned over time. I can't expect to go and be a great leader, but I can expect to go be a great person.
Now, I happen to know the meaning behind when you use the word undefeated, but I want you to tell everyone on the podcast that story of how you started using the undefeated and what it means to you.
Man, thanks, Kyle, for bringing that up. So the word undefeated to me, in 2020, when things were going south, quote unquote, and people were saying we have 2 weeks to flatten the curve, I would always go to my parents' house at least 3-4 times a week to visit with them. And in 2020, it didn't stop me. So I went over there, brought them food. I didn't Lysol the food down. I didn't wear a mask. I didn't wear gloves to bring them the food. I brought my parents food. But I did ask them a question. I was like, what do you think about this whole virus thing? What are your thoughts on 2 weeks to flatten the curve? And my mom was silent. And my dad, in Vietnamese, and I'll translate it to English, he says, we were dodging bullets while getting on that boat. On that boat, people were dying of starvation, of hunger, and different diseases. And we were stuck at sea.
Right.
And that's all he had to say. And the word undefeated popped up. I was like, my parents are undefeated. And at that point, nothing is going to be able to beat them. Right. And nothing's ever going to be able to beat myself or Margy or our marriage.
There you go.
And that's a lifestyle.
It's a lifestyle. It's a mindset. It's a mantra.
Yes.
And it's a social media handle.
Yes.
It all goes together. And I got you choked up a little bit. He got me choked up on his podcast talking about my grandfather. So now I got you choked up talking about those very undefeated parents of yours, which
Yeah.
are also social media stars.
Yeah.
People love them on Twitter and Instagram, don't they?
I feel like they do. So my dad has a Facebook, but I always post about what we're doing, if we're going out to have coffee or for breakfast and things like that. And little things like that I cherish because those are the moments you want to live in, because eventually those moments in life are going to run out.
Right.
So cherish every moment that you have, and the less regrets you will have when those moments aren't livable anymore.
There you go. Who do you want to have on your podcast that you haven't had on your podcast? Who's someone you think you're going to get? And then think pie in the sky. If you could really just magically make someone be on your podcast, who would that be? So start with who's someone you're trying to get hold of, maybe because they're local, or you know someone that knows them that you want to get on the podcast.
My parents. My parents have, I don't want to start crying, but just hearing their stories and what they had to go through is pretty emotional.
I think that oral history
Yeah.
is super important for us to keep. I hope you get a chance to do that.
Yeah. And my mom's getting closer. My dad's like, no. But just hearing their stories and letting the world hear what it's actually like. You hear some boat people's stories and they're multimillionaires. Well, my parents are far from it. Fixed income. But they're excited. They're proud. They love the United States. They love the people that give them a chance. They still keep in contact with the sponsors' grandsons and granddaughters,
Right.
Because the sponsors have passed. But they still keep every Thanksgiving, Christmas. I go to my parents' house. I see cards from the Goolsbys, who's one of the sponsors, right, or the Smiths. So it's just really, really cool. And so to have my parents on the podcast would be awesome.
I hope that gets to happen. And when they say yes, you know me, I'll show up with all the mics and recorders wherever they want to be.
Right.
And we'll make that happen. That would be an amazing podcast.
Right.
I hope it's more than one episode. Maybe it's a series of podcasts.
It might have to be.
That would be amazing.
It might have to be.
Now, put your just wish hat on.
Mm-hmm.
You had a magic wand. Who could you get to sit across from the table and be on the Defining Moments podcast?
This would be a combo. It would be President Trump.
Okay.
And Vivek Ramaswamy.
Okay.
Sitting here at the same table.
There you go.
With those two men.
Chopping it up. He knows exactly who he's going for, including a former president. That's setting your goal high. I asked you to do it, and you did it. What podcast do you listen to? And you can't say mine. You already know that one. So outside of my podcast, what podcast do you listen to? TV shows, music? What kind of stuff do you fill your time with?
So we'll start with podcasts. There's a couple of them. It's Real AF with Andy Frashella. He's awesome. I love it. He's a realist. And then I do listen to quite a bit of Vivek Ramaswamy. And then I also listen to a couple of tax accounting podcasts too.
Okay.
But it's a different variety of information that I get from these leaders.
All right. How about music, movies, TV? What kind of entertainment are you into?
So music is country. I love, that's my first love is country music. One of my favorite songs is Only in America by Brooks and Dunn. Right. And quick story about country music is my parents, when they were in Vietnam and they came over here, they learned a lot of their English through watching Westerns, John Wayne movies, TV shows. I remember watching Days of Our Lives with my parents, and I was like, why are we watching?
The soap operas are good for something. They teach you English.
They taught my parents some English, especially my mom, because she's a stay-at-home mom the first few years. And my dad on his GMC 1500 had 2 bumper stickers, and they both said, KEBC, keep everybody country.
Hey, I remember that station from back in the day. Yeah. Right on.
So, and movies, I'm into espionage type of movies, Navy SEALs type of movies. John Wick is pretty good, but I like the Olympus Has Fallen, London Has Fallen, Angel Has Fallen, those type of movies. Those are fun movies to watch.
Right on.
Dirty Dozen back in the day.
You like some action?
I love action.
Very good.
I love action. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't watch a lot of TV shows, to be honest. But other than that, did you ask my favorite food?
Oh, well, definitely want to know what the favorite food is.
Oh, I take a nice medium rare steak, ribeye, with a side salad, ranch dressing, and a loaded loaded potato.
I love how specific you are. But that sounds like what I order every time I go to Cattleman.
Yeah,
I get the side salad.
Yeah.
I get the sirloin. I get the baked potato. Man, that's like good eating right there.
How can we get them to make a meal called the Undefeated?
Ooh.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
With a side of freedom. Extra side of freedom.
I think we're going to tweet this at them.
Yeah.
We're going to hit them up on social media and tell them we need, because they make their own beer too. They got to include their beer in there too.
Yeah.
The Undefeated meal.
There you go.
Okay. Maybe we got to get a chef from Cattleman's on your podcast.
Let's do it.
We
got to find that.
That's right. And then we can eat.
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
Because I would say the exact same thing for my favorite meal.
That's awesome.
All right. Last question.
Yeah.
Both of us have amazing wives that support what we do in business and doing podcasts and hustling on the weekends. So tell everyone what it means, how important it is to have a partner in your life who, even if they don't do something with you, but they're supportive and they're open to these ideas, these crazy ideas about pushing yourself out of your comfort zone and doing new and interesting things.
Yeah. It's everything. It's everything.
Right. I agree. That's why I asked the question.
Yeah. Yeah. It's everything, man.
Okay. This has been my first special guest interview on the Saturday Morning Hustle. 315 episodes, 316, 317, somewhere around there. I lost count after 300. And it's the first time I've had a guest for the full time. And it's because you're my pal and because we do podcasts together. And I knew all these answers for the questions I was asking, but I wanted these people to hear these answers. So again, I want you guys to make sure you check out the Defining Moments podcast. It's on YouTube. It's on all the podcast channels. Check out Wong's social media. Agree, disagree, whatever. Just get in the conversation with Wong and myself. It's Saturday. We're hustling. We're grinding. We hope you are too. Make sure you check out this podcast each and every week, including next Saturday. See you then.
Thanks for having me on, man.
You got it.
That was fun.
That was awesome.
Thank
man.
you.
I knew it was going to be awesome.
Thank you.
Because you're awesome. And then I can't believe you got nervous.
I always do.
See, there's no reason to get nervous. I was here for you.
I know. You make it easier for sure. Still nervous, but you made it easier.
Thanks for listening. Subscribe so you never miss an episode. Leave a comment, leave a review, share with a friend. I would really appreciate that. Follow and engage on social media, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, and this Saturday Morning Hustle Facebook fan page. All the information, all the past episodes, all the Saturday Morning Hustle, Entrepreneur AF, and Coffee and Donuts swag is at SaturdayMorningHustle.com. See you next week.